Welcome to Deconstructing, where I take apart an iconic horror movie to find out what makes it tick.
Hello?
In this episode, I'm tackling one of the most legendary haunted house movies ever made. Not only has this classic thoroughly infiltrated pop culture, it continues to draw millions of passionate fans with each new generation. It's also been the focus of controversy, mystery, debate, and some crazy theories about its production, inspiration, and sequels. I'm talking, of course, about the horror blockbuster of 1982, Poltergeist.
They're here.
I can't think of a film better suited to the deconstructing format, which is a three-pronged attack. With Origin, I explore the roots of the story and its path to the screen. In Legacy, we examine the film's impact on popular culture and its reputation as a horror classic. And through Mystery, I analyze the rumors, fan theories, and unanswered questions, and in the case of this movie, that's a lot of ground to cover. But there's always room for trivia. So flip on the TV and settle into your comfy chair, and be sure to clear your minds, because we know what scares you. Like much of Poltergeist history, its beginnings can be a bit convoluted, but one thing we do know is the idea originated with Steven Spielberg, who originally conceived a horror-style sequel to Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Titled Night Skies, the sequel would have centered on a suburban family whose home comes under siege by malevolent aliens. Spielberg recommended Tobe to direct, based on his admiration for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Hooper liked the home invasion theme, but suggested they turn the aliens into ghosts. Spielberg also predicted audiences wanted to see more friendly ETs at the time, and we all know how that turned out. That leads us to the main reason Spielberg couldn't direct Poltergeist himself. He was contractually obligated to ET and Universal, and not allowed to direct another film at the same time. This became one of the main points of controversy about who was really driving the bus, but I'll get to that later. Early drafts of the script ventured into interesting territory. For example, there were more scenes involving the psychic Tangina Barron demonstrating her abilities to a colleague of Dr. Lesh. It's during these sessions she becomes aware of the evil presence terrorizing the Freeling family. That presence was also more defined in earlier drafts, laying the groundwork for the backstory of Reverend Cain, the cult leader who makes an unforgettable appearance in Poltergeist 2.
You are gonna die!
Many of these cutscenes are retained in the novelization by James Caan. While the studio wanted to cast named stars, most of the actors they approached were reluctant to appear in a horror film, especially one which depicted children in danger. But the casting of relative unknowns turned out to be a lucky turn, since there were no famous faces to draw audiences' attention away from the relatable Freelings and their terrifying predicament. 1982 proved to be the summer of Spielberg, with E.T. and Poltergeist hitting theaters just 1 week apart. Box office returns were huge, and Poltergeist became one of the year's 10 highest-grossing releases. But who knows how well it may have performed with the R rating originally handed down by the MPAA. If Spielberg himself hadn't appealed the rating, things may have turned out differently. Thanks to Spielberg's influence, Poltergeist got away with some seriously intense stuff for a PG rating, and audiences of all ages turned out in droves to get the crap scared out of them. A sequel was inevitable, and while Poltergeist 2 weirdly retcons the mythology behind the original, it does manage to revive the Reverend Cain plotline. Cain appeared in Poltergeist 3 as well, but since actor Julian Beck died shortly after Part 2 wrapped, he was replaced by Nathan Davis in not too convincing makeup. Sadly, Part 3 was also the final role for Heather O'Rourke, who died of complications from an intestinal blockage shortly after her scenes were complete. I won't get into the TV series Poltergeist: The Legacy because it has nothing to do with any of the movie's storylines or characters. Then of course there's the inevitable remake or reboot or reimagining or whatever the hell they're calling it now. I'm just gonna look away until it's gone. Now for something really scary. If you're a Poltergeist fan, you probably know the stories, rumors, and legends that surround it. Here's a look at my favorites. Many before me have covered this ground thoroughly, so I'll give you the short version. Some fans believe the production of Poltergeist was cursed. You see, back then, medical schools were purchasing human skeletons from India, where laws regarding disposal of human remains were a lot looser at the time, and real bones were actually more affordable than plastic replicas.
No, I think that there's a skeleton farm over in India. Jesus.
but the cast had no idea they were interacting with real human remains. This led to the rumor that the former owners of those bodies were not pleased. Maybe they didn't want to work for free or something. Do skeletons have a union? Believers in the curse cite the unnatural deaths of multiple cast members as the result of this corpse desecration. Dominique Dunne was murdered in October 1982, Lou Perryman was killed in 2009, and Heather O'Rourke died in 1988. While these are tragic losses to be sure, it seems odd the curse would skip over the rest of the cast and crew. Except maybe Oliver Robbins, who was almost strangled for real. The crew thought he was improvising until he started turning blue. While it's not uncommon to hide clues in the background of a horror film, there's surprisingly little attention given to the Easter eggs hidden in Poltergeist. Maybe you've seen these before, or maybe not. Okay, I said I'd get back to this one, and here we are. There are half a zillion versions of this story, and none of them seem to match. But a number of witnesses claim Tobe Hooper was the director in name only. It's easy to believe since Spielberg's fingerprints are all over the movie. From the visual effects, to the music, to the Freelings' goofy family dynamic, and lots more. But there are several first-hand testimonies disputing this claim. Producer Frank Marshall says Hooper was definitely the director, but also admits Spielberg was very hands-on throughout the production. One of the most vocal critics of Hooper was Zelda Rubinstein, who claims the director was on drugs at the time and only half aware of what was going on. The issue became so contentious that Spielberg finally wrote Hooper a letter, praising his work on the film and crediting him as the true director. While working on the original story, Spielberg dug into the history of Cheeseman Park in Denver, Colorado, which was built over an occupied cemetery by an underhanded contractor, just like Cuesta Verde in the movie. Unlike the movie, there's been no evidence of hauntings, curses, or poltergeist activity in the area. But if you want to find out for yourself, the park is still there, and the bodies are still buried beneath it. Do you feel that tickling inside? That feeling of something pulling you? Don't worry, that's just the urge to hit that subscribe button and get tons of new JoBlo horror content. While you're at it, why not tell us what horror classic you'd like us to deconstruct next?